The snow was falling heavily over the quiet streets of Chicago. Inside a black luxury SUV parked across the road, one of America's richest men sat silently, watching a woman he barely knew. His hands were tight around the steering wheel. He had followed her for almost 20 minutes. And he still couldn't believe what he was seeing. Why was his maid walking through a poor neighborhood alone at night? Why was the woman who cooked expensive meals inside his mansion living a completely different life outside his home? Billionaire Whitmore had spent years studying people. He knew when someone wanted his money. He knew when someone was lying. But Claire Bennett was different. She never asked for anything. She never tried to impress him. She never acted like she was working inside one of the most expensive mansions in the country. She simply came every morning, cooked for his children, smiled at them, and left every evening. That was all. At least, that was what Ethan thought. Until tonight. Whitmore was known everywhere as one of the most successful businessmen in America. His company controlled several major businesses, and his name appeared regularly in newspapers. People saw him as a man who had everything. Money, power, a beautiful mansion, luxury cars. But behind the expensive suits and successful company was a man who had become emotionally distant. After losing his wife several years earlier, Ethan's entire world changed. He became focused on one thing: protecting his children. His two children, 8-year-old Lily and 6-year-old Noah, were the only people who mattered to him. But despite having everything money could buy, Ethan noticed something painful. His children were lonely. They had private tutors. They had expensive toys. They had a huge house. But they didn't have someone who truly listened to them. Until Claire arrived. Claire Bennett had applied for a simple part-time cooking job at Ethan's mansion. She wasn't looking for luxury. She wasn't looking for attention. She only needed enough money to take care of her children. Every morning, she arrived before everyone else. She would walk into the huge kitchen, prepare breakfast, pack meals, and cook dinner before leaving in the evening. Ethan barely spoke to her at first. To him, she was just another employee. Someone hired to do a job. But slowly, something began to change. His children started changing. Before Claire came, Lily barely spoke during dinner. Noah always ate quickly and ran upstairs. But after Claire started cooking for them, the mansion felt different. She didn't just prepare food. She asked them about their day. She listened to their stories. She helped Noah when he struggled with homework. She comforted Lily whenever she missed her mother. One evening, Ethan walked into the dining room and stopped. He saw his children laughing. Real laughter. The kind he hadn't heard in years. Claire was sitting with them, smiling as they told her stories about school. For a moment, Ethan simply watched. He realized something. This woman who had only been hired to cook had brought warmth back into his home. That was when Ethan started paying attention. Not because he suspected her, but because he was curious. Who was Claire Bennett? Why did she care so much about his children? Why did she treat them like they were her own? One evening, he saw her preparing dinner alone in the kitchen. For the first time, Ethan walked inside while she was working. Claire immediately became nervous. She quickly turned around. "Mr. Whitmore, I was just about to bring dinner out." Ethan looked at her. "I know." There was a pause. Then he asked, "Claire, can I ask you something?" She looked surprised. "Yes, sir." Ethan leaned against the counter. "You spend every day taking care of my children. You make sure they are happy. You make sure they feel loved." He paused. "But who takes care of you?" For a second, Claire's expression changed. A small sadness appeared on her face. But she quickly smiled. "I'm fine, Mr. Whitmore. I just do what I have to do." Ethan noticed she avoided the question. "You have a family." Claire lowered her eyes. "Yes, but I don't like talking about my personal life at work." She picked up the tray. "I should take this to the children." And before Ethan could ask anything else, she walked away. That conversation stayed in Ethan's mind. Something about Claire didn't make sense. She was always smiling, always caring, always putting others first. But he felt there was a story behind that smile. Then came the night that changed everything. After finishing her work, Claire left the mansion as usual. The snow had started falling. She pulled her coat closer and began walking toward the bus stop. Ethan watched her from the window. He didn't know why, but something inside him told him to find out more. For the first time in years, he ignored his busy schedule. He grabbed his coat, entered his car, and followed her. Not because he wanted to invade her privacy, but because he wanted to understand the woman who had changed his children. And now, sitting in his car in the cold night, Ethan watched as Claire opened the gate of a small house. The lights turned on. A few seconds later, the door flew open. 2 small children ran outside. "Mommy!" Claire immediately dropped her bag and opened her arms. The children hugged her tightly. And for the first time that night, Ethan understood. The woman who spent every day caring for his children had children of her own. Children who were waiting for her to come home. Ethan sat frozen in the car. He had followed his maid hoping to discover her secret. But he never expected to discover her heart. And this was only the beginning. Ethan Whitmore remained inside his car long after Claire entered the small house. The snow continued falling, covering the streets in white. But Ethan barely noticed the cold. His eyes were fixed on the tiny home in front of him. A home that looked completely different from the mansion where Claire spent every day working. Inside that small house lived the woman who prepared expensive meals for his children. The woman who walked through the halls of his mansion wearing a simple uniform. The woman who always smiled, even when nobody asked if she was okay. For the first time, Ethan wondered, what kind of life was she living when she walked out of my mansion every evening? Through the window, Ethan saw Claire sitting at a small table with her children. She was tired. He could see it. Her shoulders were heavy. Her hands looked worn from years of hard work. But when her children spoke to her, she smiled. A real smile. The same smile she gave his children. The same warmth she brought into his home. Ethan watched as she served them dinner. It was not a fancy meal. Nothing like the food she prepared at his mansion. It was simple. But the children looked happier than they had ever looked sitting at his expensive dining table. Then Ethan noticed something. Claire's son was looking at a school paper. His face suddenly changed. The little boy looked disappointed. "Mommy, I didn't get the new books they asked for." Claire looked at him and forced a smile. "Don't worry, sweetheart. I'll figure it out." The boy nodded. But Ethan noticed something. Claire looked away quickly. She didn't want her children to see the worry in her eyes. She was struggling. And she was hiding it. Ethan started the car quietly and drove away. But his mind stayed behind. That night, he sat alone in his office. Usually, this was where he made million-dollar decisions. Where he negotiated deals. Where he planned the future of his company. But tonight, he couldn't focus. All he could think about was Claire. The woman who took care of his children while quietly fighting battles of her own. The next morning, Claire arrived at the mansion as usual. She greeted the children with the same smile. "Good morning, Lily. Good morning, Noah." The children ran toward her. "Claire!" They hugged her. Ethan stood at the top of the stairs watching. But this time, he wasn't seeing a maid. He was seeing a mother. A woman who sacrificed everything for her children. A woman who never complained. But Ethan still had questions. He knew almost nothing about her. Who was the man who left her alone? How long had she been struggling? Why did she never ask anyone for help? And most importantly, why did she hide so much pain behind such a kind heart? That afternoon, Ethan called his assistant, Daniel. "I need you to find out everything about Claire Bennett." Daniel looked surprised. "Claire? The cook?" Ethan nodded. "Yes. But quietly. I don't want her to know." Daniel hesitated. "Is there a problem, sir?" Ethan looked through the office window toward the kitchen, where Claire was preparing food for his children. No. He paused. There is something about her story that I need to understand. The investigation began. At first, Ethan expected to find something ordinary. Maybe Claire was simply struggling financially. Maybe she had made bad choices. But what Daniel discovered shocked him. Every piece of information showed the same thing. Claire was a woman who had spent years putting everyone else first. She had once been married. But after her children were born, her husband walked away. He left her with responsibilities he refused to accept. No support. No help. No explanation. Just a broken promise. Daniel continued investigating. Sir, there's something else. Ethan looked up. What? Claire has been offered easier jobs before. Better paying jobs. Then why didn't she take them? Daniel placed the file on the desk. Because most of them would require her to leave her children for long hours. Ethan became silent. She had chosen a harder path. Because she wanted to be there for her children. Then Daniel revealed something else. Sir, Claire has been behind on some expenses. Her children's school fees, medical costs, and rent. Ethan looked down at the file. For a moment, the billionaire who could buy almost anything felt powerless. Because the thing Claire needed most was not money. It was someone who cared. That evening, Ethan watched Claire leave the mansion again. But this time, he didn't follow her. He already knew enough. He knew the truth. Claire Bennett was not just a maid. She was a mother who was quietly carrying the weight of the world. And Ethan made a decision. A decision that would change Claire's life forever. He would help her. But she could never know it was him. The next morning, Claire received a mysterious envelope. Inside was something she never expected. And when she discovered what was inside, she couldn't stop the tears from falling. The next morning, Claire Bennett arrived at the mansion just like every other day. She carried her small handbag, tied her hair back, and walked into the kitchen with the same quiet confidence she always had. She had no idea that the billionaire she worked for knew her biggest secret. She had no idea that Ethan Whitmore had discovered the life she had worked so hard to hide. To Claire, she was still just the woman who came to cook. Nothing more. As Claire prepared breakfast, Ethan watched from a distance. He noticed things he had never noticed before. The tiredness in her eyes. The way she checked her phone repeatedly, probably waiting for messages about her children. The way she smiled even when she looked exhausted. For years, Ethan had been surrounded by people who wanted something from him. Employees wanted promotions. Business partners wanted deals. Strangers wanted his money. But Claire was different. She had no idea he was watching. She had no idea he was planning to change her life. That afternoon, Ethan called Daniel into his office. Make sure nobody knows where the help is coming from, Ethan said. Daniel looked at him. Are you sure about this, sir? Ethan looked at the photo of Claire's children from the investigation report. Yes. He paused. She would never accept help if she knew it was from me. Daniel understood. Claire was proud. She was the type of person who would rather struggle silently than ask for anything. The first surprise arrived a few days later. Claire came home after work and found several grocery bags outside her door. She looked around. Nobody was there. Inside were enough supplies to last her family weeks. Food, children's snacks, household items, and a small note. It simply said, "Someone believes your children deserve the best." Claire stared at the note. Her heart raced. Who would do this? She whispered. She asked her neighbors. Nobody knew anything. She checked the security cameras around her home. Nothing. The person had been careful. Whoever was helping her wanted to remain a mystery. A week later, another surprise came. Claire received a call from her children's school. "Mrs. Bennett, we wanted to inform you that your children's remaining school balance has been cleared." Claire froze. What? The payment was already made. By who? The woman on the phone checked the records. "I'm sorry. The person requested to remain anonymous. Claire sat silently. She felt overwhelmed. Someone was helping her. But she didn't know why. That evening, Claire sat on the edge of her bed after her children fell asleep. She looked at their peaceful faces. For months, she had been worried. Worried about bills. Worried about school. Worried about whether she was giving her children enough. But now, someone was making things easier. A tear rolled down her cheek. "Whoever you are, thank you," she whispered. Meanwhile, inside his mansion, Ethan watched his children laughing during dinner. Claire had prepared their favorite meal. Lily smiled. "Claire makes the best food." Noah nodded. "She makes our home feel happy." Those words stayed with Ethan. Because he knew something. Claire was not only feeding them. She was healing a part of them that money could never fix. But Ethan soon realized something. Helping her secretly was not as easy as he thought. Because Claire was observant. She noticed everything. One evening, she looked at Ethan strangely. "Mr. Whitmore." Ethan looked up. "Yes." She hesitated. "Do you know anything about someone helping my family?" For a second, Ethan froze. The question caught him off guard. But he quickly controlled his expression. "Why would you ask me that?" Claire looked down. "I don't know. I just feel like whoever it is, knows things about my life that only someone close to me would know." Ethan remained silent. Because she was right. Days passed. More help arrived. A new laptop for her son's schoolwork. A medical appointment arranged for her daughter. A winter coat for each child before the cold became unbearable. Claire was grateful. But she was also curious. She needed to know who was behind it. Then one evening, Ethan made a decision. He realized that hiding forever was not the answer. He wanted Claire to know the truth. But he did not want her to feel like she owed him anything. So he planned something. A simple dinner. Not at the mansion. Not at the office. Somewhere neutral. A place where he could finally tell her everything. The invitation arrived 2 days later. Claire opened the envelope carefully. Her name was written on it. Inside was a message. "You and your children are invited to a special dinner. Please come. There is something important you need to know." Claire became nervous. She had no idea who sent it. She wondered, "Is this the person who has been helping us?" She looked at her children. Then she made a decision. She would go. That night, Claire dressed her children in their nicest clothes. She held their hands as they entered the restaurant. But the moment she walked inside, she stopped. Her heart nearly stopped. Because sitting at the table waiting for her was the one person she never expected. Ethan Whitmore. The billionaire she worked for. The man who knew her secret. The man who had been changing her life from the shadows. Claire stood frozen. And Ethan slowly stood up. "Claire." She looked at him in disbelief. "Mr. Whitmore?" The mystery was finally about to be revealed. Claire stood at the entrance of the restaurant, completely frozen. For a moment, she wondered if she was dreaming. The mysterious person who had been helping her family. The person who had paid her children's school fees. The person who had sent food, supplies, and everything they needed. Was sitting right in front of her. Ethan Whitmore. The billionaire she worked for. The man she thought barely noticed her existence. Claire looked at her children, then back at Ethan. She didn't know whether to sit down or walk away. "Mr. Whitmore, what is this?" Her voice was filled with confusion. Ethan stood up calmly. "Claire, please sit. I know you have questions." But Claire remained standing. "Are you the one helping my family?" The restaurant became quiet. Ethan looked at her for a few seconds before answering. "Yes." Those 2 words shocked her. Claire slowly sat down. She looked at Ethan with disbelief. "Why?" Ethan lowered his eyes for a moment. Because he knew this was not just about money. It was about trust. "It started the night I followed you." Claire's expression changed. You followed me. Ethan nodded. I know it was wrong to do that without telling you, but I wanted to understand something. He looked at his children sitting beside him. When you came into my home, my children changed. Ethan explained everything. He told her how he noticed the difference in his children, how they laughed again, how they looked forward to seeing her, how they finally felt cared for. Then he told her about that night. The moment I saw your children run toward you and call you mommy, I understood. Claire listened quietly. Her eyes slowly filled with tears. Ethan continued. I realized that every day you came into my mansion and gave my children love, even while you were fighting your own battles. Claire looked down. She didn't want to cry in front of him. I was only doing my job, sir. Ethan shook his head. No, Claire. A job is something people do because they have to. He paused. What you did came from your heart. Claire finally asked the question that had been in her mind. Why didn't you just tell me? Ethan smiled sadly. Because I knew you. She looked confused. You knew me? Yes. He continued. You are the kind of person who would refuse help because you would think you didn't deserve it. Claire became silent. Because he was right. Ethan looked at her children. Your children needed opportunities. They needed security. They needed someone to believe in them. He looked back at Claire. And you needed someone to believe in you. A tear rolled down Claire's cheek. For years, she had been strong for everyone. But nobody had ever stopped to ask if she was okay. Then Ethan said something that touched her deeply. Claire, do you know what my children told me about you? She shook her head. They said you make them feel like they still have a family. Claire covered her mouth. She never expected those simple acts of kindness to mean so much. Ethan reached into his jacket and placed a small envelope on the table. Claire looked at it. What is this? Something for your children. She hesitated before opening it. Inside were documents. Her eyes widened. What is this? Ethan looked at her. Your children's education has been secured. Claire stared at the papers. She couldn't believe it. I can't accept this, she whispered. Ethan expected that answer. I knew you would say that. She looked at him. Then why did you do it? Ethan smiled. Because sometimes people who spend their lives helping others forget that they also deserve help. Claire looked at her children. They were smiling. They didn't understand everything happening. They only knew their mother was happy. And for the first time in a long time, Claire allowed herself to feel something she had forgotten. Hope. But Ethan was not finished. He had one more surprise. A surprise that would completely change Claire and her children's lives. After dinner, he asked, Claire, would you trust me enough to come somewhere with me tomorrow? She looked uncertain. Where? Ethan smiled. Somewhere I think your family deserves to see. The next day, Claire had no idea what was waiting for her. She thought Ethan had already done more than enough. She thought the kindness he showed her was already impossible to repay. But when Ethan opened the door to the place he wanted to show her, Claire could not believe her eyes. Because standing in front of her was a future she never thought she would have. The next morning, Claire woke up with one question in her mind. Where was Ethan taking her and her children? After everything that had happened, she still couldn't fully understand it. The billionaire she worked for had discovered her struggles. He had secretly helped her family. He had paid expenses she thought she would never be able to handle. But Claire still felt overwhelmed. She wasn't used to receiving kindness. She was used to being the person who gave it. Ethan arrived that morning in a black luxury car. Claire stood outside her small home with her children, holding their hands. She looked nervous. Mr. Whitmore, you have already done so much for us. I don't know what else there could be. Ethan smiled. Just trust me, Claire. She looked at him. After everything he had done, she realized something. For the first time in years, Someone was trying to help her without expecting anything in return. So she nodded. The car drove through the city. Claire watched the streets pass by through the window. Her children were excited. They had never experienced anything like this. After a while, the car stopped in front of a beautiful neighborhood. Claire looked outside. She saw peaceful streets, beautiful gardens, and large comfortable homes. But she didn't understand why they were there. "Why are we here?" Ethan stepped out of the car. "You'll see." They walked toward a beautiful house. Claire noticed the front door was decorated with a small sign. Her name was written on it. The Bennett family home. Claire stopped walking. Her heart started beating faster. She looked at Ethan. "What is this?" Ethan handed her a set of keys. Claire stared at them. "Mr. Whitmore." Her voice shook. "This can't be." Ethan smiled. "It is." Claire couldn't move. She looked at the house. A real home. A safe place. A place where her children would never have to worry about moving again. A place where they could grow up feeling secure. Her children ran toward the door excitedly. "Mommy, is this ours?" Claire looked at Ethan. She couldn't find the words. Tears filled her eyes. "You bought this for us?" Ethan nodded. "Yes." Claire shook her head. "Why would you do something like this?" Her voice broke. "I was only your cook." Ethan looked at her seriously. "No, Claire." He paused. "You were the person who walked into my house and gave my children something money could never buy." He continued. "You gave them patience when I was too busy. You gave them comfort when they felt alone. You treated them like they mattered, not like they were just rich children." Ethan looked at her children. "And I wanted your children to feel that same security." Claire wiped her tears. "I don't know how to thank you." Ethan smiled. "You don't have to." She looked confused. "I just wanted you to know something." "What?" "You spent years believing your job was to take care of everyone else." He looked around the new home. "But someone needed to remind you that you deserve to be taken care of too." For the first time in many years, Claire allowed herself to stop worrying. She watched her children run through their new home. They opened doors. They laughed. They imagined their new rooms. And Claire stood there, crying quietly. Not because she was sad, but because she finally felt seen. Months later, things changed. Claire still worked at Ethan's mansion, but not because she had no choice. She stayed because she loved the children and because Ethan treated her with respect. Ethan's children continued growing into happier, more confident kids. And Claire's children finally had the opportunities their mother had always dreamed of giving them. One evening, Ethan watched Claire and his children laughing together in the garden. He remembered the night he followed her. He thought he was discovering a secret. But he discovered something much greater. A woman with a heart bigger than her circumstances. A mother who never gave up. A person who proved that kindness is the greatest wealth anyone can have. Ethan Whitmore had spent his entire life building an empire. But Claire Bennett taught him the most valuable lesson. A person's true worth is not measured by what they own, but by what they give when nobody is watching. The end. Thanks so much for watching. Kindly share and subscribe to my channel. Tell me what you think about this story in the comment section. See you on my next video. Bye.